Good afternoon. I'm Kurt Jander, Sales Director at Huntsman Polyurethanes, and I'm glad to welcome you to this Huntsman webinar. I see we have people from all over the world, in particular from Europe, India, and Middle East, participating in this call. This event is dedicated to fire safety and energy efficiency regulations impacting composite panels. The webinar will be presented by Diane Dams, Global Fire Senior Expert at Huntsman. While Diane holds a PhD in science and has more than 25 years experience in fire science, regulation and standards. She was involved in the development of EU harmonized fire standards in building and construction. Further, we will have Luciano Miozzo, Platform Manager Insulation at Huntsman, presenting today. Luciano has a PhD in material science, a solid background in polymer chemistry, and 20 years of experience in R&D. Luciano is currently leading the development of new polymers for composite panels and insulation at Huntsman Polyurethanes. For your information, all participants are muted throughout the session. The webinar is expected to last 30 minutes, followed by a 30-minute Q&A session. This webinar is recorded and the recording will be shared after the session. During the session, you will be invited to take part by answering a question raised by Diane. You can share your questions at any time during the WebEx using the Q&A panel on the right. Well, our agenda of today is, at first, I will introduce the company Huntsman, who we are and how we have built strong knowledge and experience in foam insulation. Next, Diane will talk about the regulations and trends impacting composite panel specification, putting a special focus on energy efficiency and fire safety. Then Luciano will explain how Huntsman responds to the new requirements created by the changing trends that impact our business. And finally, we will open up for the Q&A session. Let's start with a brief introduction to Huntsman. Huntsman is an American company founded by Mr. John Huntsman about 50 years ago. Today, the Huntsman Corporation is a publicly traded global manufacturer and marketer of differentiated and specialty chemicals. Our products number in the thousands and are sold worldwide to manufacturers serving a broad and diverse range of consumer and industrial end markets. ICI Polyurethanes, later acquired by Huntsman, was one of the first companies to introduce the technology used to produce rigid foam more than 60 years ago. We pioneered further with the right innovative blowing agents, and the first continuous system production was implemented. During the years, Huntsman continued to further develop the rigid continuous systems business and technology, both for fire properties, processing, as well as quality performance. The objective of this webinar is twofold: to provide you with clear information and key trends in construction, in particular on energy efficiency and fire performance, and to support your growth in this complex environment. I now leave the floor to Diane Dams, Global Senior Fire Expert, who will tell you more about these key trends. Diane, over to you.
Thank you, Kurt. Good afternoon, everyone. When looking at the construction sector in general and the metal-faced composite panel application, several major trends influence the way we build and the materials we choose, namely energy efficiency, fire safety, prefabricated and modular systems, sustainable construction, climate resilience, and acoustic comfort. Today, we will focus on energy efficiency and fire safety. The first key trend is driven by the need to prevent climate change by reducing the emission of greenhouse gases. Buildings account for 40% of the CO2 emissions, and therefore, reducing the need of fossil energy for heating and cooling is key. This means that insulation materials with low thermal conductivity, such as polyurethane, are ideal solution providers. Another key trend is the need to build with fire safety in mind. With the increasing use of insulation, preventing heat to escape, and the trend to build more densely to accommodate population growth, we need to make sure only adequate and safe building designs are promoted, and we will see how polyurethane composite panel performance can help. So, let's go in more detail on energy efficiency first. Energy efficiency, why is it important? The timeline in this slide shows the milestones that have led to the growth of insulation demand. The trend towards very high energy efficiency in buildings started after the signature in 1997 already of the Kyoto Protocol, aimed at reducing the amount of greenhouse gases emitted by human activities. The European Union agreed to reduce our 1990 baseline emission level by 8% by 2012. Secondly, in 2002, the European Union implemented its first version of the Energy Performance Building Directive, EPBD, that introduced the obligation to providing a building energy performance certificate and the obligation to member states to impose a minimum energy performance. In 2010, the second revision of the Energy Performance Building Directive introduced the concept of nearly zero energy building, requiring member states to define the most optimal U-value per climate and per region, and the obligation for new public buildings to be nearly zero energy by end 2018, and for all new buildings by end 2020. In 2015, the Paris Agreement on climate change required the EU to be more ambitious. So the European Union agreed a 40% reduction of the 1990 baseline emission by 2030. To achieve that, in 2018, the third revision of the EPBD emphasized the need to decarbonize the existing building stock and the need to develop a long-term renovation strategy. Recently, the new Green Deal initiative, whose ambition is for the EU to become carbon neutral by 2050, has launched a series of initiatives, such as the renovation wave, that will double the initial renovation target, accompanied by adequate funding and promotion mechanisms. All these developments create a huge opportunity for polyurethane insulation, which is the most efficient, large volume, conventional insulation material. The graphs here show the results to date of all these initiatives, both on the energy consumption as well as on the growth of insulation materials and pure insulation in particular. The building directive required improvements on the building energy efficiency to be implemented by the member states. The graph on the left shows the gradual reduction of building energy demand to achieve the nearly zero energy building requirement target by end of 2020 for all new buildings in three selected countries. On the right side, the graph shows that the reduction of building energy consumption was accompanied by an increase A faster growth of pure insulation in general was seen, as shown by the blue line. This can be explained by the fact that due to its much lower thermal conductivity, or lambda value, compared to the conventional insulants, the same energy performance of the building could be achieved without significantly increasing the thickness of the insulation layer and therefore minimizing the need to adapt the construction detailing. The lambda value of the chosen material has an impact on the thickness required to achieve a given U value. Here, when looking at the U value for roofs and walls in these both charts, as prescribed in Finland, Germany, or Northern Ireland, Italy, for nearly zero energy performance, we can see the advantage that PU brings by almost halving the panel thickness. The white bar is PU with a lambda value of 0.020 to mineral wool, the brown bar with a lambda value of 0.41 watt per meter Kelvin. For example, for roofs in the left graph, in Finland, where the U value requirement is 0.09, the required thickness is 76% higher for mineral wool than for PU. This in turn simplifies handling and ease the installation and fixing with the polyurethane panels. The lambda value of the chosen material has also an impact on the weight and the required structural support. The table shows an example of two roof panels with a similar U value. In the last column, you can see that the composite panel with the PIR core weighs 60% less than the one with the mineral wool core. The consequences of this and the earlier slide is thinner panels for PU, which result in more space in the construction, easier to carry and handle sandwich panels, and less metal support and less cost of the construction is needed. So as a result, these thin, relatively lightweight composite panels can safely bridge wide spans. For example, a panel just 100 millimeter thick can easily bridge a clear span of some 6 meters, reducing the metallic structural element requirements. A study of PricewaterhouseCoopers showed that in a reference building of a standalone retail with a gross area of about 2,300 square meters, up to 10% less steel is required to support the roof and the walls. At the same time, the overall cost of the steel, panels, and insulation is also reduced by 10% when using PU. Let's now go in more detail on fire regulations and requirements. And now here comes the poll question to you. So please use the panel on the right side to answer. I will read out the question. Which classifications can increase confidence with architects and designers to use new PIR composite panels with high fire-rated applications? Please tick all that apply. You have 20 seconds to answer, and then we will look at the results. So I wish you a good luck with the answers, and in the meanwhile, I will continue with the introduction to the fire part. Fire codes are an integral part of the national building codes, which are reviewed more regularly than historically to accommodate the changing building practices. And why are building practices changing more? This occurs because of several reasons, but the key one is the stepwise energy efficiency regulations and the move to a carbon neutral economy by 2050, which we showed before. The change in building and fire codes follow this timeline as well, but strong effects are expected to occur in the next 5 to 10 years in external wall and roof insulated building solutions as new standards and requirements appear in European Union and in the member states. I wonder whether we can already have a look at the results of the poll. Ah, there they are. We had almost 50% of the people who voted, and it's a little bit mixed between the two reaction to fire performances and the application test. Well, thank you for your vote, and we will explain now the difference of classifications in the coming slides, and we will also give our view on this question. So, fire safety. Let's focus first on the title of this slide. Buildings must be fire safe. This is done by providing rules for fire-safe building design, but also by setting performance requirements according to fire tests. There are three typical families of fire tests to assess composite panels performance, and that is where we will speak about in the rest of the slide. The three typical families of fire tests. The first family is reaction to fire tests for construction products. They determine the response of a product to a starting and early developing fire. The observations are made at the flame in front of the sample, characterized by the schematic drawing that you can see. There are many reaction to fire tests, but for regulatory purpose in the European Union, small flame test and the single burning item test are applied. In case of the single burning item test, the parameters measured are flame spread, heat, smoke and flaming droplets or particles. The second family of fire tests, resistance to fire tests, are on the construction assembly. They determine how long the assembly, either wall, ceiling or floor, can contain a full fire and keep it confined to the room of origin. Looking at the schematic, the observation happens at the cold or the unexposed side of the element. As a third family, in addition to reaction to fire or resistance to fire testing, a performance-based approach may be necessary to demonstrate that the building with composite panels is safe. This is done through an application test. It can be required by the building code or by an insurance company such as Factory Mutual FM, for example. For the schematic in this case, we use the building or part of it. With the test results, fire classifications can be obtained in these three fields. So, what are the typical fire classifications of a composite panel then? On this slide is shown the three types of fire performances again, with underneath the name of the European classification standard. On the right side, the possible classifications are shown for each of the three. So for first, for reaction to fire, 6 Euro classes are defined from class A1, A2, B, C, D to E. At first, I'd like to note that the core of the composite panel shall be minimum class E when tested with a small flame test on the edge of the panel. The sandwich panel is then subject to a single burning item test, and both test results lead to the reaction to fire classification. The red square gives the typical the typical composite panel classification. For example, BS2D0 or BS1D0 for a low smoke version. A composite panel can only be A2 when a specific steel coating, an A2 adhesive, and an A2 car is used. For the second family, resistance to fire, The performance is expressed as the time to failure in mechanical integrity and/or heat insulation performance of a 3 meter by 3 meter composite panel construction element by R, E, or I. Typical classifications for composite panels are in the range of 15, 30 to 60 minutes. This can be achieved with PIR and mineral wool panels. Now, a 60-minute PIR panel requires a thickness higher than 100 millimeter. However, technology in this field continues to improve. Through certification via large-scale application tests, the third family, the performance of building is assessed and approved. Several institutes and insurance companies certify this way, for example, Factory Mutual or FM being one of the biggest. This is an obvious way to show design engineers how composite panels can be used to achieve fire-safe buildings. It is especially relevant for new PIR products. And here I would want to relate back to the poll again about creating confidence. This type of tests and approvals may be helpful to get new PIR products into the market. This slide is a summary showing the fire classification standards, the certification holder, and typical classifications. The composite panel producer is the certificate holder in all cases. And for reaction to fire, it is the composite panel which is classified, and that includes a core performance as well. For resistance to fire and application tests, the construction system or assembly is classified. Underneath is the simplified schematic for the type of test which is applied throughout the webinar. Now we will go into specific composite panel applications and requirements. There are different building types that have distinctly different fire requirements in the building code. And in this slide, they're mentioned from left to right: large single-story buildings, cold chain, high, medium, and low-rise buildings. The typical composite panel applications are given underneath: wall and roof cladding and partition walls for large single-story buildings, walls, roofs, and doors for cold stores and rooms, garage doors in single-family homes. We will look in these in more detail in the next slides. We start with large single-story buildings, external wall and roof cladding, and internal partition walls. Large single-story buildings cover a broad range of different uses and industrial, food, mercantile, public, agriculture. On the right side of the photo, indicative minimum requirements are given for external walls and roofs, and on the left side for partition walls. The values are indicative only, I have to stress, because requirements differ dependent on the purpose of the building, and they are also different from country to country. It is not possible to give a minimum performance that is applicable for all and everywhere. That's why I say indicative. On the left side, for a partition wall, the indicative minimum requirement is quite stringent, PS2D0, and specifically 60 minutes resistance time and potentially an application test. On the right side, indicative minimum requirements for external wall and roof cladding is PS3D0, and generally no resistance to fire requirement, or 30 minutes in case it is built in close proximity of a neighbor building. And thirdly, generally no application standards applies for the minimum requirement. However, industrial, food, mercantile and public buildings often require higher fire requirements because of a higher fire risk due to good start or hot processing or due to people occupancy. The table summarizes the performance of composite panels with PUR, PIR and mineral wool cores that are achievable for this building type. Nowadays, new PIR technologies, when combined with a suitable process and panel design, can help achieve the requirements in this building type for reaction to fire, resistance to fire, and application tests. Here is a growth opportunity for high fire-rated PIR composite panels. PUR-rated panels, classified based on reaction to fire tests, can meet the minimum requirements for external walls and roofs and can also be used when appropriate. For cold stores and rooms, this is the sector where the use of composite panels started in the early 1970s. PU composite panels grew strong because of its favorable properties of energy efficiency, processing flexibility, resistance to humidity and condensation, hygiene properties, and so on. Again here, indicative minimum requirements are given for the external wall and roofs on the right side and for partition walls on the left side of the photo. Looking at the table, for reaction to fire, the minimum requirement for external walls and roofs can be met for both PUR and PIR panels, and these are mainly applied in this sector. For those cases where resistance to fire or an application test such as FM approval is needed, PIR high fire-rated panels can be used. Mineral wool cores are not recommended for cold applications at or below 5 degrees Celsius because of condensation risk and hygiene issues, but also because of high panel thickness to meet the energy requirements. For example, often the energy requirement is stringent and PU thicknesses of 200 millimeters are used, which corresponds to a UValue of 0.11. This corresponds to a thickness for mineral wool cores of 375 millimeters, which is impractical. For garage doors and single are important for the product selection. Low thickness, low weight, resistant to handling and shocks, and durable. The table gives reaction to fire performances, but is not critical for the product selection. PUR and PIR is the preferred core material in this application. Here ends the session on the trends in energy efficiency and fire safety. I will now hand over to Luciano, Platform Manager Installation at Huntsman, for the final part of the presentation.
Thank you, Diane. I remind the audience that you can use the Q&A tool during the speech to ask questions. So at Huntsman, because our aim is to contribute for the best solutions, we have developed a full range of solutions to meet the market needs. Dalto PUR and Dalto PIR are formulated polyol systems to produce a wide range of PUR and PIR, respectively, based fire-rated foams for composite panels. With a full range of products, we offer a solid solution for most requirements. Our offer of Dalto PUR and PIR formulated polyol systems can cover the needs of composite panel producers for both non-fire-rated and fire-rated products. To achieve fire-rated composite panels, we developed over time several products, differentiated in terms of reaction to fire and fire resistance. Among all our formulated polyol systems, the one developed to produce PIR composite panels can help manufacturers to achieve the B classification for reaction to fire when combined with suitable process and panel design, which is the highest achievable classification with polyurethane-based products. The products are shown in this table here. Starting from the left to the right, both Dalto PUR FR and Dalto PIR FR+ can enable our customers to produce fire-rated composite panels. Those formulations have been developed to work on laminators running at low temperature, namely 40 and 45 degrees Celsius, respectively. This temperature is identical or very close to the one used for PUR, non-fire-rated composite panels. So the use of Dalto PUR FR and Dalto PIR FR+ can allow, during the production, a faster switch from the production from non-fire-rated composite panel to the production of fire-rated composite panels. Dalto PUR can help manufacturers to achieve a minimum CS3D0 classification for reaction to fire, as reported into the table. Dalto PIR FR+ helps achieving both a BS2D0 classification for reaction to fire and EI15 for fire resistance. With Dalto PUR, the use of adhesion promoter is not needed. Our MDI system, which has been developed for PIR foams, require a higher IP ratio, a higher temperature of the conveyor, of course, and the use of pre-adhesives, which are also part of our commercial offer. Going from Dalto PIR FR to Dalto PIR HFR, and then on the right top to XHFR, these formulated systems can help manufacturers to increase both fire resistance and reaction to fire performance. Our Dalto PIR XHFR can help manufacturers to achieve a BS1D0 classification for reaction to fire and EI30 for fire resistance. All those products are also FM approvals identified components. Other key features which are increasing across this product family are also the mechanical properties and the durability, with our, again, XHFR being the best in class among our products for fire properties, mechanical properties, and durability. So I see that there is a question in the Q&A, so I suggest to take it for the end for the Q&A session, and we will answer at the end of the presentation. So Dalto PIR formulated polyol systems for insulation foams have been optimized to help manufacturers to meet stringent international fire safety requirements and to satisfy the needs of composite panel producers, architects, and building promoters worldwide. Composite panels based on PIR technology combine, first, energy efficiency, second, lightweight, and third, ease of installation with fire safety performance.
Thank you, Luciano and Diane, for providing these great insights into this very important subject. With this, we all together will be able to have fighting fires, protecting properties, and most important, protecting people's lives. Now we are going to open the Q&A session. Our experts, Diane and Luciano, and of course myself, will be happy to hear and answer your questions. Let's start with the first one, which is actually a question for Diane. Do you think that COVID-19 crisis will have an impact on the insulation growth in Europe?
Thank you. That's a good question. We have not dealt with that in the webinar, but we are all very much involved in this pandemic. It could go either way, negative or positive, but we believe that the crisis will have a positive impact. Due to this pandemic, the European Commission and will invest quite a lot of money. I think it's about 91 billion euros a year in massive building renovations. So on the basis of that, we think that the crisis will have a positive effect.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. So the next question is for Luciano. What is the percentage of recycled material in your home?
Very impressive question. First of all, I need to underline that Huntsman does not sell foams, but polyols formulated systems for insulation of foam. So foams are produced by our customers. Basically, it depends on the type of the technology and of the product. Of course, we are part of the global and general game, and we have various options based on the choice of the raw materials. We have an example I can, of course, disclose because I cannot disclose all the details about formulation. But, for example, when aromatic polyesters based on recycled PET are used, we can achieve for sure a 60.5% of recycled material into the foam.
Yeah, thanks, Luciano, for answering the question. The next one actually is again for you. What is today your best-in-class technology in terms of fire and insulation properties?
Okay, so have in mind a product which was not reported in the table I described before. So we have recently completed a new development with the target of meeting the SBI classification BS2 and lambda declared of 20 versus current typical market values of 22. And we're exploring the opportunity to make further steps both in terms of fire and lambda.
Yeah, thanks, Luciano, for the answer. The next one is for Diane again. What is the impact of construction system in fire tests?
Well, the impact of the construction system is very big in large-scale tests. So when you look at the smaller scale tests, that then the system is less much tested. For example, in the small flame test, it's more the core. When you're going to the larger tests, resistance to fire and application tests, then the building, the assembly is very important. And it's a combination of materials and the way of installation that will determine the performance in the fire, up to the design of the building itself.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. So it seems that you're quite popular. So the next one is again for you. What are the options to enable low lambda solutions?
Okay, yes. It is possible to improve installation performance by but also by improving the foam insulation properties. And that can be done by the selection of the blowing agent or by looking at the morphology of the foam.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. So there is actually now finally a question for me as well to be answered. So the question is, are you supplying XHFR into Middle East? Well, the answer was in my intro already. So Huntsman is a global operating chemical supplier, and of course, Middle East is a very important region for us. And yes, we are also supplying that technology to the Middle East region. For more information, you either get contacted by your sales counterpart anyway, or please, if you're not a customer yet from Huntsman, please raise your question again to the email you will find in the survey later on. All right, so the next question is for Luciano. General perception is that PIR panels have more blisters formation than PUR during their life cycle. What is the performance of your Daltopir in that respect?
Oh, it's a very, very interesting question because I spent, I think, the last 10 years working on durability. Yes, I agree on general perception. Which is our position against that? So, latest generation of PIR technologies have been submitted to both internal and external tests. What does it mean? We performed both accelerated aging tests internally in our labs and also in external labs outside the company at specific institutes, mainly in Europe. What we saw is that we've been able to see a clear improvement of the long-term performance in accelerated aging tests. So if I compare all the properties in terms of durability, we have a clear trend, and today we achieved a very good robustness of our product.
All right, thank you, Luciano. So there is the next question. I actually like that question because it starts with a statement. So the statement is, thank you for the interesting presentation. So great to hear that you enjoyed that. And the question is actually for Luciano. What do you mean for higher durability of HFR and XHFR systems?
Yeah, okay. We can spend hours about that subject. I will try to say that durability is the resistance against the formation of blisters, which are, of course, a defect which may appear on PIR composite panels. Of course, it is one of the key performances we tackled on during the years, and our latest generations, namely HFR and even more XHFR, have been specifically developed not only to achieve a BS1D0 classification for reaction to fire, but also to provide a higher durability as tested both by our customers and also in accelerated aging tests.
Yeah, thanks, Luciano. So I think we have time for two more questions. The first one is for Diane, and the question is, I thought the reaction to fire in brackets SPI was dependent just on foam properties and its composition, but in the slides I see that also panel properties matter.
Yes, that's correct. It's both. Both are important. On one hand, the foam properties, but also the panel design, the thickness of the steel, the joint detail, and other properties, the way that they are fixed. Yeah.
Thank you, Diane. And here comes the final question we have time to answer today during the session, and that's for Luciano. In many applications, EIS 60 is the minimum requirement, like external walls and public buildings. Do you see that the chance that polyurethane to compete with mineral wool also in these markets?
Of course, there is a race to achieve higher performances in terms of fire resistance. Yes, of course, we are actively working on that topic. Of course, I cannot disclose all the details in a way to improve safety of our products and to allow us and our customers to enter new markets and to achieve those kind of new performance and high performances.
All right. Thank you so much for all your questions. Well, these are the questions we did. Well, sorry, there are also questions where we don't have time to cover during that session today. However, we'll answer that by email, as mentioned before, and we will get back to you individually. Ultimately, now we have came to the end of this event. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to a survey and an email contact. Your answers to this survey will help us to improve our next edition of a webinar. The recording of this webinar will be provided at the end of the survey. If you have any questions, please contact your Huntsman account manager. If we are not having business together yet, please contact us through the email, which is at the end of. Thank you all very much for attending our webinar and sharing our common interest for safe and sustainable buildings. We hope you enjoyed the time with us like we did and have learned something today. It was a great session, and thank you for being with us for this event. Together, we can make it happen. Thanks a lot, and with having said that, enjoy the rest of the day, the evening, and stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.